Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Francis Vogel Story Strategist podcast. It gets better and better, and I'm delighted today to have a lovely person called Daniel Aarons on the show. Daniel is the founder of a relatively new, quite profound organisation called Conveenie, and Daniel and I were sat next to each other on purpose at a wedding last year in Frome. Is that how you say it? Frome?
It is, yeah, beautiful room.
Frome. And it was fabulous. We had a wonderful time at this really interesting multicultural wedding because Daniel's cousin, Josh, is one of my oldest friends. My brother and I grew up with Josh and his sister Tammy, who is one of my oldest, dearest friends. And she obviously realized that Daniel and I would get on incredibly well and decided that we should sit next to each other at this wonderful wedding with really long, lovely trestle tables in this beautiful, beautiful venue. And we had a really nice chat. And so we haven't spoken to each other, have we, Daniel, for about a year? But we've kind of been on each other's radars. And when I came up with Francis Vogel Story Strategist, I think I was just having conversations with Daniel and others, and it was that time that I was thinking this whole thing up. So I would say that my conversation with Daniel was pretty significant, actually, in the kind of thinking up of this whole new project for me. And so it's a great pleasure to have Daniel on the show. And I'm going to hand over to you, Daniel. The first thing I would like for you to do, please, is to give us the headlines about what Conveenie is. But soon after that, I'd like you to try to give us a sense of kind of where all of this came from for you. And to whatever degree you're comfortable, I'd love for you to weave your own personal story into that in terms of where you were at logistically, emotionally, physically, and why this whole thing is so important to you. And also geographically where you are and why that's significant to the business and its evolution. So welcome, Daniel. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. It's yeah, it's a real privilege. So actually, I might start by just going back to the origins of this, and then how it then manifested into something real. So it's probably about 3 or 4 years ago. Would have been just before COVID, and I was realizing that there was something missing in my life, and I realized I need to fill it with more nourishing activities. I needed to be more connected, and sometimes you've just got to take a step and go outside your comfort zone. And once you take a step, things lead on from that. And the steps I took were to join Dulwich Players, which is a local amateur dramatics. And after signing up with them, by the end of the day, I was actually cast in Pride and Prejudice. So it was a big step. And I joined Camberwell Community Choir at the same time. And after taking that step and that leap, whilst for me it was brilliant. You're making new connections, relationships, you're developing new skills. You're working on a I guess a collective project together, and creatively building something. When you're in a cast, and I found it was great for mental health as well. To be connected, to be part of something bigger than yourself, and yeah, it was a bit of a light bulb moment for me personally. But then there was the seed of this idea around how vital local spaces are, local community spaces, and how physically they bring people together. And I started doing a bit of sort of informal research and speaking to people, local community leaders, venue owners, people involved in local groups. And I realized that it's not an easy experience to find these local spaces. It's not easy to work out what these spaces provide and can match in terms of needs, amenities, location, pricing, the list goes on. And then I'm calling them hosts, so local community venue owners, all of volunteers. Often the process can be quite administratively burdensome, quite analog. There's obviously a scale of sophistication, but at one end, you've got venue owners who might be literally writing things down on paper, and lots of phone calls. And I just thought, oh, God, there's got to be a better way to be able to find these spaces and for hosts to be able to make the most out of their spaces. So I identified this two-sided market, if we could say, host being the B2B and guest being the B2C, and realizing that there had to be an easier way, a quicker way, a smoother way to improve that whole process and that ecosystem, and indeed create an ecosystem, because it's rather fragmented. So it was an idea. And actually during COVID, I did an MBA with my brother-in-law, wonderful man, Miles Chapman. And we were study buddies, and I managed to convince the rest of the group to develop this as a proper business plan. But it was still hypothetical, and I was still working full-time in branding, which is something I've done for 20 years, branding and design. And so it kind of sat on the shelf for a while, but it was there in the background, and there was probably fear in actually taking it forward. And whilst probably for some of the time that I was working at Ogilvy at Curly Portobello, I'd identified, Monday I'm going to spend actually on this project, and I'm going to work 4 days a week at the agency. But I wasn't really committed to it. I wasn't really invested in it. And it was only really March last year, when that time at the agency came to a close, that I made a commitment to myself that if I don't do this now, I'm going to have a lot of regrets. And I really had to sort of check in with myself and ask myself what's holding me back. And like I say, it's fear of the unknown. It's lots of what ifs. Is it going to work? And yeah, one day I just decided to dispense with that and just take a first step. And the first step was working on the brand strategy. And obviously that came very naturally to me, and it flowed. And then I'd done something tangible. And from there, I got in touch with an old design director, Ben Davidson, incredibly talented designer. And we started on the expression for the brand. And then it became even more tangible. And yeah, by that point, I had a name. The name actually, despite having done a lot of naming projects in my past, and knowing how sort of rigorous the naming process is, actually just got to a name with my sister in the pub, and just landed on that and just had to, put it to bed. We've got a name now. I can identify myself with a company and a name, and then it became real. And then from that point, I had an identity. I had a brand. Okay, let's create this. Let's do it. And yeah, I sort of used skills that I'd learned through working, managing projects and branding, and I wrote a timeline and tried to be disciplined with myself. What are all these steps that I need to go through? So I started looking at the user experience. I did some quite comprehensive consumer research on both sides of that market, um, and started to build and iterate, and at the same time speak to lots of different potential web agencies, and have criteria for what I need in that relationship with these agencies, and landed on an agency, and started working together, started building, and that that experience, I had a timeline of 5 months. In the end, it ended up being 8 months. I'm quite impatient, so I had to learn a bit of patience in the process. And throughout that process, obviously, I couldn't just be creating this platform. I needed to build real relationships with people out in the community, and there's a few reasons for that. Obviously, to start to build a network of interested venues, start to build those relationships, get feedback as I'm going through the process, and I think probably the most important thing actually was, when you're working for yourself, when you're working in this room at home, it can be, I'll be honest, quite isolating and challenging, and you've got to check in with your mental state of mind a lot, and actually getting out and meeting local venues was incredibly motivating, and people are really supportive. When you tell them about your story and the origin of this, and they can see that you're purpose driven, and you're doing this for all the right reasons, and that they can be part of the journey with you, that that bolsters you. You don't feel alone anymore. And this was literally a case of cycling around my local area, knocking on doors, and getting conversations going. And I'm really, really thankful for that, and all the people that have been willing to believe in this and support that journey. I remember it would have been April last year when this was really just an idea, and I walked into a coffee shop next to a hall. It's called Peddler's Acre Hall. I think it's My Chai is the it's a chai shop actually, and I just got talking to this guy, and he's the community lead at Lambeth Council, Mahim Mia, and we talked, and his support was incredible, and him believing in that meant a lot, and we've had lots of conversations throughout the process, and now one of their spaces, that space where it all began in a way, is on the platform. So there's a really nice kind of continuity and circularity to the whole process. And I'll just add another thing, that in terms of circularity, I actually did a geography sociology degree, which you think doesn't necessarily lead to anything, right? But it led me into branding, and actually I was just reflecting the other day, kind of what I'm doing now is geography sociology subculture. It's about people and place and connection to place, and relationships and connections. So that was sort of an interesting aha moment the other day. So
It's really funny that you say that. It was only yesterday that I also had the thought, gosh, I did cultural theory and sociology
Hmm.
at Birmingham. And where are you, by the way?
I was at Hull.
Okay.
Hull up north. Yeah.
Yeah, I did graphic design, then I did cultural theory and sociology, and then randomly I did an MA in art history.
Yeah.
Obviously, that all makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
But it actually in the end, and the 20 years of random stuff I've done since then,
Mm.
now I look back and think, okay, I
Yes.
completely understand why this all makes perfect sense. It's all
Yeah.
come together. But at the time, of course, you just
Yeah.
don't know why you're doing what you're doing
And, and,
necessarily.
and actually, another thing, straight after university, I did what was called a sales internship, which was actually selling gourmet food door to door in the
There you
suburbs of
go.
London. And in a way, it's kind of gone full circle
Yeah.
as well.
I do think there's
And
something in that. I think that
yeah,
it's either that there's something innate in us that will eventually come out the wash in the right way, as it were,
yeah,
that sort of we're poking at by, for example, with me, it was working in a pub, or, all the random theatre stuff I've done. And, all of it ends up being um, in the big picture of communication and connection for me.
yes,
But at the time, I don't think I would have necessarily connected running an art workshop for a load of 4-year-olds in South London, in Camberwell, weirdly,
uh-huh.
with what I'm, in any way doing now. But I could, in another conversation, articulate what the connection is there. But
Yeah,
I don't want to go off on one at all about me and even about that, because what you've just given us is not only a really, I mean, there's so many places we can go. I want definitely for you to share with our listeners, I suppose, the logistics in terms of the cost and how, what, when, who, like, what do you do when you're a venue or you're a person wanting a venue? So there's that. But then I
yeah.
also just want to say, before I don't get the chance, that I think you've also really generously done exactly what I rather hoped you would, which is to give us a real insight into the sort of emotional experience that it's been for you. And it's really quite a privilege to listen to you talking so candidly. And of course, therefore, you are qualified very much to support those who are on a similar journey. Um, I've got a couple of, sorry, I tend to ask 3 million questions in one,
Oh,
but one question is, how does it feel to you now to say all that you just said in the last sort of 5-10 minutes? How does it feel to
um,
actually say
it,
all this out loud?
it feels quite surreal, that I've managed to get to this point, because there have been points where I thought, no, I can't do this. It's not possible. But like I was saying before, um, once you just push ahead and get past another step, then sort of gives you confidence to carry on. But
There's something about manifesting, and I hate that word.
I
We
know.
all hate that word, but it's something about the whole, and you've obviously used words like iterate, and you and I have both been in the world of branding and UX and all the rest of it, and that whole
Yeah,
thing of working out loud
yeah,
and failing fast, all the kind of agile
yeah.
language. But in doing so, you are pushing your own self,
Mm.
albeit with the imposter syndrome and with the
Yeah.
disbelief. There's the other side of you which is going, come on, Daniel, it's just crack on.
Mm.
What's the worst
Well,
case scenario? And you know what I
yeah.
mean? In
Well,
that sense.
I think we all have these two voices in our head. The imposter voice, the negative voice, but then the joyful, curious, um, can do voice. And that it modulates throughout the day and through the week. But um I was also reflecting, even now, when I see a venue and I'm walking down the street and I think, oh, should I go in there? And then there's a voice that says, no, you're not going to be welcome there. No, that, and I just checked myself. I'm like, no, go in, say hello. And actually, 2 days ago, that situation happened. I was working working at the Hawks in Southwark, just good to get out and work at another place. And I walked outside and looked to my left, and it's a beautiful church amongst all these high skyscrapers, and actually just around the corner from Ogilvy, where I used to work. I just knocked on the door, and there's these four religious figures in there, and I felt like I was intruding, and they said, "No, come in, make yourself welcome." And we just got talking, and the new pastor there just joined 3 weeks ago, and it was just serendipitous, and he was really, really interested in the idea, and that's how connections are made. So yeah, I'd urge people to check that voice,
Yeah.
and be bold, and yeah, like you say, what's the worst that can happen?
It's funny because I was also thinking, why am I recently, like, I think it was even this morning, why am I doing this work? Like, I've got a friend who sprung to mind who doesn't even like going for walks. So, for her and I to socialize, it's quite interesting. So we have to come up with something that we both want to do. She would rather sit at home with a cup of tea. I'd rather go for a walk or a run, not with someone. But anyway, I just think, God, this is her idea of a nightmare. Like being out all the time, talking to adventurers, like helping people with pubs, farmlands, people who want to bring people to places, actual physical places.
Yes.
She'd be like, oh, no, I want to stay at home. But I think there's something for me in, I don't know what it is. I guess it's this innate concern. And on the one hand, I'm really excited about AI. I get really excited about tech. So I'm definitely not a technophobe.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's something in me which sort of says, oh, the idea of, I got really quite emotional about the high street about 15 years ago. And, I try really hard. I do try to shop on the high street and not online if I can. And, just the whole idea of us kind of being implicit and without sort of malice, but nevertheless just completely destroying physical spaces, and there's all sorts of detail and boring stuff that we could get onto today around business rates and increases in property prices and people having to leave the city. And sometimes I do for a split second have a kind of apocalyptic fear of like what it would all look like if there weren't these physical places. And I think that does feed into it. And like you, working at home as an entrepreneur, I have to make it my business to get out from a mental health point of view.
Exactly.
So it's kind of woven in with a personal project as much as it is with this kind of big picture system change, as I call it, societal manifest.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, sadly, a lot of local spaces are not surviving. Whether they're local TRAs, tenants and residents associations, the halls that aren't being used as much as they can and should be, that are sadly getting closed. Pubs are obviously having a hard time. And yeah, absolutely. It's these are the physical spaces where people come together locally, and share experiences. And yeah, we're social animals. We need each other. And I think, yeah, particularly after COVID, people were yearning to come back together in physical spaces and have real experiences. And yeah, dislocation, isolation is another challenge that people of all ages face, actually. And yeah, I mean, for me, it was an antidote. Having these real experiences with real people. On top of that, the online world that we're living in, it's even more important to make space, make time and space for these real relationships, because they can't be replaced. they're incredibly important. Yeah.
Speaking of real people and real spaces, why don't you tell us about what it looks like in terms of how somebody might join the platform? Where is the platform up to at this time? You know, you've only been, I think you launched what, 3-4 months ago for real.
Launched in January.
Right.
Yeah.
So we're
Yeah.
now March. I think you sort of you sort of tempted us all with a couple of teasers back in November or something like that.
Yes. Yeah.
But so that's, you know, it's really new. And, you know, I can appreciate that there are some platforms that you've had the opportunity to sort of benchmark against and base things on. You know, obviously I'm thinking of Airbnb and other kind of both aggregator and brokerage platforms that put, you know, an A with a B. I know because I had a random stint working for a startup like 15 years ago, based in Berlin. Very bizarre story. I won't get into it, but I was asked to come in and help guide this platform that was designed to get art into spaces that were being underutilized and needed to diversify their income revenue. And of course, I was coming from an art insurance background at that time. Well, not of course, but that's what I was doing. And so I had the kind of, you know, the value of art, the shipping, the packing, the installing, the restoring, the insuring, the selling awareness. And for that reason, I think they thought I'd be useful to help put this thing together.
Yeah.
And it was really interesting. Why was I boring you with that story? Oh yeah, so I understand how arduous putting together the platform must be for you in the back end. I'm not so interested for you to tell us about that, and you probably don't want to talk about it either, but you know, in terms of the front end of it, what does it look like? How does somebody make this work?
So for the last couple of months, I've been completely focused on encouraging venues and hosts to join the platform, because there isn't a market, there isn't a platform without the venues on there. So I've had to, I mean, that's another thing. When you're working with yourself, you've got to be very disciplined and focused. And that's been, you know, I've had a goal in terms of the number of venues, but it's been a little bit harder than I thought it would be. I have to say, but I've just persevered and made sure I've had that FaceTime with all these venues for a few reasons, actually. You know, building a real relationship with hosts. You know,
Sorry, can I stop you there? I've just had an idea.
Yeah.
Do you like Lynn Truss? Eats, Shoots and Leaves. Do you know Lynn Truss? She wrote Eats, Shoots and Leaves.
I'm gonna have to read it.
So if you're a bit of a geek, like Daniel and I ended up in the world of comms, and you kind of go off into weird silos, and mine was copy geeking out. And there's a wonderful woman called Lynn Truss who wrote Eat, Shoots and Leaves, which is kind of all about like profoundly grammar can affect things. But you just, that phrase, building a relationship, we've all heard that phrase so many times, but if you put a semicolon after building, it says building a relationship.
Yes. Yeah.
Nice. Sorry.
And as you mentioned that, I'm actually just looking at the shoots that are now forming of my sunflower plants, which
so shall I tell you why there's a pun there in case you didn't get it? You might have done, but eats, shoots, leaves. There's obviously shoots as you're describing and leaves of a plant.
Yeah.
So it eats shoots and leaves, or it's something about eating, shooting, and then leaving.
Yeah.
No, sorry, it's eats, shoots, and leaves. Yeah, or eating, shooting, and leaving. Anyway, whatever. We're massively going off on one. Sorry, I'm not on drugs.
Yeah. So
go on.
So through that, you know, the whole onboarding of hosts, it's literally been sitting down with hosts, you know, helping them through the process.
Why is it hard? Just sorry for stupid questions, but
so
What are people not quite realizing off the bat, do you think?
I mean, there's some barriers, which could be organizational, cultural change. It
They
could
not
be.
want more money.
They do.
So what,
They
so you're
do.
saying to them, here's a
I
platform where
mean,
you can earn more money because I'm going to bring some people that didn't know
yeah.
you were there to it.
So getting really granular,
Yeah.
it could be calendar integration, that could be a challenge. They might have an existing calendar that they're managing bookings through, and actually having another calendar can be challenging. But we're finding ways to mitigate that, and there's workarounds. And this is what I emphasize to hosts, that let's find a way that can work for your venue, because every venue is unique. And it sounds cheesy. I'm solution oriented, but I've realized that I genuinely am. I want to find ways that it can work for hosts.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is real live UI feedback. I've with my team built this platform, but until it's actually being used, there's surprises along the journey. You're like, no, why are you doing that?
Well, I actually I had the privilege of experiencing one of your bugs this morning when I was trying to search, and it got stuck on some random location because I'd given it my location. And then it was like I had to sort of manually unselect my location. So there's something about connect, and I can't even. I was thinking, poor Daniel. I can only imagine how annoying this is, because all I want to do is I have a friend who's looking for a permanent home for a yoga class at the moment. She's the most extraordinary teacher. She's got a following of about 30 people who are literally, she's nomadically finding spaces around North London because she just can't find a permanent space to hold her class. So every bloody week she has to yes, I mean, there's obviously loads of people that need your help.
Yeah.
Well,
interesting. You mentioned.
I was doing a sort of prototype
Yeah.
search for her with her in mind.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, and I could, yeah. So I get it. It must be that you're at that stage of the build at the moment.
Interesting you mentioned that, because I mean, that's one of the key audiences that I've actually just launched a marketing campaign for, so Mind Body. And I've built in some functionality for recurring bookings, because some group leaders, if you want to call them that, need to be able to have that security of space, and also for hosts knowing that their space are going to be utilized, so they've got that recurring revenue. But currently it's payment up front, which can be challenging for cash flow. For
payment up front for what?
If it's a recurring booking. So
what I want, for how many bookings?
For however many you want, subject to.
Okay.
Yeah. So how can we work around that? Well,
so you're not rewarded for the gentleman's agreement.
No, not yet.
I mean, ladies' agreement, we should say, on International Women's Day, right?
Okay. Well, there's a host can offer discounted percentages for recurring bookings, but what I'm going to be building in very, very soon is Klarna.
Oh, cool.
So that will diminish that barrier to that upfront payment.
Does Klarna allow you to stipulate how many payments? I mean, over what time? So
I'm going to need to dig into it a lot more, but essentially it's payment up front, and then I believe it's then a separate financing effectively.
Yeah. Okay, that sounds good.
With the person booking. So
people don't really understand what you're doing in the background. You are aware, I'm sure, of the I mean, in case it isn't glaringly obvious from our surnames, that Daniel and I are both of the Jewish faith, although I don't think you're in any way observant, and I'm certainly not.
No,
let's not get into that.
I'm culturally.
Please, can we not get into that today? However,
I did use the word chutzpah the other.
Right. I mean, it's just embedded. It's embedded. It's difficult as a Jew to describe whether or not you are like what Judaism is, because it's not a religion. It's a sort of ethnic. Anyway. Yes. Anyway, speaking of chutzpah, I'm sure it's crossed your mind that that whole thing of 3 shidduchs and you go to heaven.
You might need to remind me.
Okay. I think it's 3 shidduchs. That could be Islam. Maybe I've got our own religion and another fabulous religion mixed up. But it's something around, if you make 3 matches,
Yeah.
matchmaker, Fiddler on the Roof style, then you go to heaven. So, you know, what you're doing obviously is the business of shidduchim, should I say, of matchmaking.
Yes.
Right? Have you thought about that? And how actually
No,
you're a real
I like
mensch.
that.
You're such a mensch for doing this for the world. You're going to look back on your life and you know, if there is a heaven, I'm sure you'll go to it if that's where you want to go. Or I'd rather be reincarnated. But you know, this absolutely menschy thing that you're doing, and nobody knows about how painful it is in the background. And you're going out there and you're going, I'm just trying to be a citizen, to help you be a citizen, to hold your hand so that you're not alone. And they're like, well, I don't know, because of the recurring. And you're like, fuck me. You don't even know what's going on in the background, what I'm having to build for you. Yeah. Right?
And that point on matchmaking, there's actually there's personal connections that I'm bringing people together, like literally, not just on the platform. You know, I was at Draper Hall the other day. It's a thriving community space in Elephant and Castle, and I was talking to Chalice, who runs it, and I was then talking about another venue that's just opened on Old Kent Road, run by an incredible social entrepreneur, guy called Nicholas. And I was talking about Nicholas to Chalice, and Chalice said, I've been wanting to meet this guy for years. I was like, great, let's fix it up. And this is about hosts learning from other hosts, and
Yeah.
that they don't need to be, they're not in competition.
Did I tell you the story when we met at the wedding? About how Rudy and I got together? I don't think I did, but I will tell you briefly the story about how my husband and I, so we knew each other because we had, as it turns out, we learned this from Facebook, 34 mutual friends. And actually Rudy DJ'd at parties that I was at, but was a year or 2 older than me in kind of academic school years. And he was also a bit stoned and a bit of an introvert, and so sort of didn't really notice me because he was noodling away on his DJing, and he was super cool. I noticed him because you noticed older people, didn't you?
Yeah.
And he was this cool DJ. But we never actually, and then we went off, you know, in our own little worlds for 10 years. And, you know, I was going out with them and Rudy was doing Rudy things. And eventually we met on Tinder, of all places. And I saw Rudy and I was like, oh, Rudy Khalaschi, he's a lovely guy. And the image of the DJ came up. But we would never have thought that we were supposed to be together until there was a shidduch on,
it was meant to be
on Tinder. So it needed that facilitation, even though we knew about the other, which I'm just trying to say is to your point about, you know, it's not so much that people aren't aware of each other necessarily. It's facilitation.
I've realized, you know, I've always wanted to share things with people. You know, if I've learned something new or discovered something or something made me laugh, I want to share it with people. And also I realize I'm getting satisfaction out of bringing people together. Literally, you know, I think they will get on, they'll be able to learn something from each other. Win-win. And I realized I definitely get satisfaction out of that. So
but what's also the bigger picture thing for you? What's your, without wanting necessarily to get into your politics, although obviously I'd really like to, what is your manifesto for change? What would you like to see? Have you read John Alexander's book Citizens yet?
Oh, I haven't yet.
You haven't?
I'm gonna order it.
I'm gonna have to. I'm actually in touch with him. He's lovely, but I am gonna have to ask him for an affiliate link because I basically cheerlead this all of the time. But yeah, this is right up your street. It's all about how people can, as he says in his book, this is the best way to describe it, need to start cleaning the dog shit off their own door rather than waiting for somebody to come along and do it for them, such as those sort of inner children that run our country in government, for example. And I think, you know, what you're all about is also just saying to people, should we just do this ourselves and crack on with creating community and society? And
I mean, I don't want to overstate what I'm doing yet. So, you know, I'm obviously it's early stage, but I'm driven by purpose, and that is what motivates me each day. And you know, over time, if it's solving a problem for hosts and for guests, and it's bringing people together more often to have great experiences, then hopefully it will be profitable. But I think, if you start with making money, then it's not going to work.
in fact, if you're flexible about the making money thing, it opens up wonderful cans of worms, like support from trusts and foundations and government grants and, you know, sponsorship and all sorts of things, where if you're obviously not about the profit, in fact, quite a lot of people would like to support you. And I dare say, I don't know, I don't think you are set up as a
No,
CIC or
I'm
social
a
enterprise.
limited company, and I don't hide that. We are a for-profit company, but I don't think profit and making a positive change needs to be at odds. And
No.
If this can become a real ecosystem of space, place, and people,
Yeah.
then that'd be incredible.
In fact, can I go one step further and say on that, there's been a lot of cap in hand, you know, there's a lot of difficult dynamics that exist in the not-for-profit and social enterprise world, where, you know, you've still got the big guys funding the little ones and all the rest of it. And absolutely, as you say, I think there's something about being able to stand on one's own 2 feet as a profitable organization. Both of my companies are not charitable, you know, endeavors. But it's about saying, you know, this has a really important role in society, and that the bigger picture of what this is going to affect change with is the value, right? And I don't need to go cap in hand. I don't actually want to spend my time doing grant applications. I need to spend that time convincing you as to why this is a really important what's the word? I can't actually think of the word now.
Initiative. Yeah,
it's good enough word.
Yeah.
No, I sort of actually didn't. It's something about the sort of facilitationary quality of it, like a cog. This is a really important cog in a wheel where and I'm really into environmental shit at the moment. And you know, it's more just, you could be the most selfish person in the world, but you're still better off insulating your house. And by the way, you know, fossil fuels are thankfully becoming more expensive than than alternative sources of energy. And so great, people can just be selfish assholes and still contribute to, you know, mitigating climate change.
You've actually just reminded me of something. In the sign up process for hosts, there's a section around building sustainability credentials, so specifically related to the building, and that can be really challenging for older venues. But I wanted to encourage that, or at least provide hosts with directions to various organizations that can help them on that journey. So they may not have credentials yet, certificates, but there's these little interventions that I've wanted to place throughout the whole experience that I think are important, and I know are important to people more broadly when they are making choices. So if they can see a venue has taken an active effort to establish their sustainability credentials, that might be a driver of choice.
Exactly.
Just to pick up on sort of the benefit locally. This may be a way off, but what I want to continue to build is really a local economy, around these spaces and events that are taking place. So you can think of all the auxiliary services and local businesses that could support local events. So, be it catering, be it DJing, the list goes on and on. And, that's something I've got in my vision to really build a local economy.
And that can't be, I mean, that hope, I'm hopeful and optimistic like you, but famous last words. Hopefully that won't be a very difficult part of the platform build, because once you've got all the really sort of serious nuts and bolts sorted, if what you're looking for is 10 local caterers, for example, and it's a case of, introductions on the platform, albeit I'm assuming you could have a lovely time, sort of affiliate spicing it up for yourself. But that doesn't necessarily need to be too complicated. Although I suppose also then you get into the realms of insurance, don't you? And sort of to what degree are you responsible for recommendations? And although I can help you with that when you get to that, because having come from the world of insurance. Go on.
It's interesting you mentioned that. I actually just reached out to a new events insurance startup, Vento Insurance, and there's just a lot of synergies there. And whilst we're not necessarily recommending each other's services, it's just putting it on guest radar.
And again, to your thing about profit making, if you choose not to be if you choose not to make profit from something, you can actually abjure yourself of the responsibility of then having to kind of weave in all of this, or the kind of legal stuff. Although, there are ways of putting together introducer agreements, as they're called in the insurance world, that sort of stipulate to what degree you can be responsible for somebody's insurances. And I'm sure there's a similar
that is something that did keep me up at night for quite a while, but I worked with an incredible lawyer, and
also you're aggregating all these amazing contacts along the way for people. So you're doing all of this donkey work now to make people's lives really easy if what they want to do is come along, and then they suddenly realize, have these lovely aspirations for, diversifying their space and their revenue stream, pivoting their purpose. Or you have somebody who really wants to start a knitting circle, but they haven't thought about any of this shit. And then they get massively overwhelmed, and you're like, don't worry, I have a friend.
That's it. I want to make it easy and painless. And I mean, talking about venues there, the really diverse venues that we've got on the platform now, unexpected actually, but it's a broad church,
literally, probably.
I mean, there's the cinema museum, there's local community theatres, wellness spaces, photography studios, pubs, cafes. Cafes are great because when I'm out and about, I just pop in and have a chat, and inevitably there's a nice coffee together with the hosts.
But there's always such lovely stories to these places, and this is this is what I'm in the business of doing, is helping to tease out the stories of these incredible places, and of the people that have been responsible for the custodians, and sort of why they've ended up there. I mean, I could just speak to people for days, weeks, months, years about why on earth they've ended up doing,
certainly introduce you to some of these amazing sort of local community leaders, for sure.
Well, I want, before we wrap up, this always happens, I told you that we would end up potentially talking for hours. I do want to just ask you about the geography of it all, because obviously you're based down in Camberwell. And do you see it? I mean, at what point can you foresee a time when you don't physically have to go out, and or indeed would you like to continue always to
Well,
go out? And
yeah, I was asking myself that question as well. I want to continue to be able to go out and, meet people physically, but really, if this is to scale, that that's not going to be possible at a national scale. But yeah, focused currently Lambeth, Southwark, Lewisham. I need to, I guess, have a reflection of what's worked in these boroughs, what I can improve, and then build out from there. But yeah, I think for me, starting locally has been really important. Yeah, to build those local relationships. And also on a practical level, I've literally been cycling around everywhere. So yeah.
I'm thinking about Canopy and Stars. Sorry, I don't know if you heard that. There was an alarm go off. I just had to stop it with me. Sorry about that, listeners. Canopy and Stars. You know Canopy and Stars?
No.
They are probably my favorite. There's a term called cabin porn. There's actually there's an Instagram account called Cabin Porn, and there's a book of the same organization called
Did I
Cabin
not
Porn.
Google that after?
Yeah, Google Cabin Porn, it'll be fine. But you can just Google Canopy and Stars. It's Alistair Sorday's sort of sidebar project, which is an aggregator of all of the amazing glamping and cabin places. I mean, I've just basically got obsessed with it over the last 6 years, and that has hugely influenced what I spend my time doing now, recreationally, but also what I want to be doing for work and the kind of organizations I want to support. But if you have a look on their website, and they're a B Corp, although God knows what that means anymore. But they do take pains, I think, to visit somehow all of the cabins. And I'm not sure if this is right, so apologies, Alistair Sorday and Canopy and Stars, if I'm getting this wrong, but I recently filled in a survey for them, and one of the questions was, are you aware that we visit every single cabin? And we're talking about from Land's End to John O'Groats, basically. So I don't quite understand how they get to these remote places to go and see these shepherds.
Local champions.
Yeah. Right. And I was going to ask you about that. Is there this kind of grand plan for having local champions?
Well, there is, when you're working for yourself, there's this sort of short-termism versus, longer grander plans. And yeah, I think I'm gonna, a few months down the line, hopefully when the platform is serving both sides of the market, and there's successful bookings, to reflect what works, what needs to be improved, and then build out a more detailed plan of how I can replicate that, and make connections in different boroughs. And yeah, I think this idea of local champions is a good one.
I mean, it makes so much sense, and it's so easy just to walk into your local place and give them a flyer. Do we use flyers anymore?
We do.
Okay, so give me a handful and I'll do all of that for you in northwest London happily. I'm not going to go out of my way to do it, but I'll certainly have some in my bag.
Well, there'll be a Conveenie cap for you as well.
A cap?
Yeah, there we go.
Oh, great. Well, that's all the incentive I need, actually. I shouldn't have bought that new running hat.
Gotta love merch.
I love a bit of merch. So I think the fact that I've talked quite a lot on this podcast, which is, I mean, I talk quite a lot generally, but on the podcast, I'm quite disciplined and I really enjoy listening to people. But I think the fact that I've talked quite a lot on this one is testament to how much I care about, enjoy geeking out with you about, and, really want to see survive, thrive, and, how much I want to support what it is that you're trying to achieve. And not least because I can see that personally it's obviously been a really significant passion project for you, but also I genuinely believe strongly in the purpose of what you've embarked on here for society. And I think I'd like to think that you're going to be looking back in 20 years time, let's say, and I don't think you'll have realized what you've put in place. And I hope that's helpful for you to hear, because you're obviously on a journey of like, did I actually just do that? And are they talking to me about this? So I wanted to give you that experience.
That means an incredible amount. And yeah, I am invested in this in so many ways, emotionally.
I can tell.
And yeah, thank you.
Well, tell us what else, what can people, so where should people go, Daniel? And what would you like people to do? What is your what's the
action.
what's your call to action?
The call to action. Well, we're on socials, or on all the socials. Yeah, connect on Insta. Call me. I'd love to speak. Call me. I'd love to speak to you if you're interested. If you want to get involved in any way. If you've got space that you want to make more of. If you're running a local community group and you want to explore how Conveenie could help you. I like talking to people, so cool. You can email too. But yeah, I just want to continue to build connections.
Do you want actually to give people your phone number? I wouldn't necessarily suggest you do that on a podcast, but you have made a point about how you love receiving calls.
Sure.
That's random. Is that how you want? It's quite novel, actually. Is everyone ready? Daniel's about to are you sure now? I'm not sure. Why don't you think about that?
07532 022 646. Have a conversation. Give me a call.
Heard it here first, everybody. Daniel's actual phone number.
I just
thank
encourage
you
people to explore the platform. Join as a host if you want to, and obviously I'll take you through the process and help you in any way I can. And welcome feedback as well. When you're just starting out, nothing is perfect, but you can improve by listening to people and iterating. So I absolutely welcome that too. Just in summary, just get involved and look forward to meeting you.
Love it. Thank you so much. And the list of what you can do in these spaces is endless. And I'm thinking about, the photography opportunities for people who can't afford massive shoots for, products, and how we just might diversify the market by bringing the costs down.
Yes.
So that people have wonderful backdrops to advertise things to mitigate the big boys and girls and how they're monopolizing the world.
It's funny you mentioned that. I just added film shoot locations as a category on the platform this morning. So
amazing.
There we go.
Great. It's happening live in front of our eyes. It's a great pleasure, Daniel. This definitely is one of many conversations we are going to be having, I should think, over the next few years. And I just think what you're doing is fabulous. So well done. And thank you everyone for listening. It's Daniel Aarons, Conveenie, Instagram and other places. Okay. Thanks, Daniel.
Okay. Thank you.